9 experienced ski hikers, led by Igor Dyatlov, set out on a difficult expedition. They were masters of the Ural Mountains, prepared for anything. The tent was sliced open, violently, from the inside. The hikers were gone, having fled into the sub-zero darkness. The date was January 27th, 1959. The Dyatlov group began their ascent, aiming to conquer the formidable Mount Otorten.
Their own photographs, recovered from the scene, show a team that was happy and confident. Then, on the 1st of February, they made a baffling, fatal decision.
They pitched their tent not in the relative safety of the forest line, but high on the barren, wind-blasted slope of Kholat Syakhl. In the language of the indigenous Mansi people, the name translates to Dead Mountain.
They were scheduled to send a telegram on February 12th.
When it failed to arrive, their families sounded the alarm. Search parties were dispatched, but it wasn't until February 26th that pilot Mikhail Sharavin spotted the abandoned camp from the air. The tent was half torn down and covered with snow. It was empty, and all the group's belongings and shoes had been left behind. This is a direct quote from the official 1959 investigative report. The canvas, investigators noted, had been sliced open with a knife. Not from the outside, but from the inside. The first 2 bodies were found a mile away.
Yuri Doroshenko and Georgy Krivonisnenko.
They lay under a towering cedar tree, beside the remnants of a desperate, small fire.
They were barefoot and dressed only in their thermal underwear.
Three more bodies, including Igor Dyatlov, were found between the cedar and the tent. Their frozen position suggested they were crawling back up the slope. Back toward the very thing they had fled. The final 4 took 2 months to find.
They were discovered in May, after the snows began to thaw.
Buried under 13 feet of snow in a wooded ravine. And this is as where's my Menagerie. These 4 hikers had sustained massive, crushing internal injuries, yet displayed almost no corresponding external trauma. Ludmila Dubinina and Semyon Zolotaryov had catastrophic rib fractures. The force, the medical examiner noted, was equal to that of a high-speed car crash.
With the case file sealed, speculation and folklore rushed in to fill the void. The public, and later, independent researchers, needed an answer.
They needed something to blame for the impossible injuries and the panicked flight. The theories that emerged were as terrifying as the incident itself. We must first look to the original inhabitants. The indigenous Mansi people have long warned against travel in this specific region. To them, Kholat Syakhl, the Dead Mountain, is forbidden territory. Their legends speak of the Menk, a tall, hairy, ape-like creature. A powerful, nocturnal hunter that stalks the Urals, a creature known to the rest of the world as the Yeti, or the Russian Bigfoot. This theory gained traction from a single piece of evidence. In the group's own satirical newsletter, produced just before their final ascent. They included a cryptic note.
From recent news, we now know that no men exist. They can figure, was this a joke, as most assume?
Or had the hikers seen something in the days leading up to their deaths?
The second theory turns from folklore to conspiracy. We must remember the context. 1959, the absolute height of the Cold War. The Soviet Union was a landscape of secret cities and hidden military tests. Another group of hikers, camping 30 miles south of the incident, it reported seeing strange, bright, orange spheres in the sky on that exact night. Camila. Some researchers hypothesize the hikers were blinded or driven mad by a concussive blast, or were fleeing. This, they argue, would explain the classified files. It would explain the strange radioactivity found on the clothing. As the result of a powerful, non-penetrating blast wave.
A missing tongue, a grim military interrogation, or a grotesque cover-up.
But the file offers stranger entries still. There is the avalanche theory, but it fails. The tent was not crushed, and the hikers' tracks were still visible in the snow. It doesn't explain the crushing injuries or the flight from safety. Every mundane explanation collapses under the weight of the contradictions.
The fire remains open. A collection of monsters, secret weapons, and supernatural events. But in the archive, we believe the most terrifying monster is often the one we cannot see or hear. The archive is not satisfied with monsters. When we clear the file of supernatural entities and state conspiracies,
The contradictions themselves begin to form a terrifying, rational pattern. We do not need a Yeti or a secret weapon to explain the scene.
We must begin with the location.
Kholat Syakhl is not just a mountain. It is a perfect aerodynamic structure. Its exposed, dome-like slope is notorious for generating a specific weather event. This phenomenon is known as a katabatic wind. On-screen citation, U.S. Geological Survey. This is not a simple breeze. It is simple breeze. It is a sudden, high-density cascade raising air. When a wind of this ferocity strikes a taut nylon object, like the hiker's tent.
This vortex shift is the engine for an invisible psychological weapon. Infrasound.
Infrasound is low-frequency acoustic energy. It exists below 20 Hz, the absolute floor of human hearing.
Research, including landmark 1960s studies by NASA, links this precise frequency to a horrifying set of symptoms.
without any discernible cause.
Now, we rebuild the timeline.
They are trapped inside an acoustic torture chamber, and their own minds betray them.
This. Wow, that's phenomenal.
They flee into the negative 30-degree storm.
They are barefoot, underdressed, and completely disoriented by the panic-inducing sound. They tumble down the slope until they reach the forest line, a mile away. The infrasound fades, but a new, more insidious killer takes its place. And this is where the file's most bizarre clue is finally, tragically, are found under the cedar, almost naked. It is called Paradoxical Undressing. As the victim's their confused brain misinterprets, hypothermia constricts the surface blood vessels. In the final moments, these vessels fail, releasing a sudden, hot rush of blood to the skin that feels like fire. They rip off their clothes, believing they are burning, just moments before they die. What of the crushing injuries? The final four were not attacked. They were found in a deep ravine. The crushing impact of the fall, compounded by the weight of the snow. Doubt is more than enough to explain the car crash trauma. The missing tongue is not a military secret or ritualistic mutilation. Forensic science confirms this is simple, rapid decomposition, aided by small aquatic scavengers. And the radiation? Not a weapon, but a mundane piece of 1950s gear.
Gas lantern mantles often used thorium, a radioactive element, to glow brightly. The traces were consistent with handling, not an explosion.
There was no monster on the dead mountain.
There was no Yeti, no secret weapon, no supernatural evil. The unknown compelling force was the mountain itself. The legend of Dyatlov Pass is a warning, written not by spirits, but by physics. It is a terrifying case file on the lethal power of infrasound. And the final, tragic deceptions of a mind succumbing to the cold.
William investigate the warnings.
Share your knowledge in the comments below. And join us as we continue to decipher the truth from the lore. The archive contains the complete record of known events,